Your prolonged silence with your avoidant ex. Here's what really happens. It starts off quietly, maybe too quietly. You've gone silent, no texts, no calls, no attempts to reconnect. And at first, your avoidant ex seems completely unaffected. They post, they laugh, they act unbothered. You start to wonder if they ever cared at all. But what you don't realize is that silence, prolonged silence, does something to an avoidant that words never could. It pulls them into their own emotional mirror, one they've been avoiding their entire life. This is where things start to shift. Not instantly, not loudly, but subtly, psychologically, and deeply. In today's video, we're going to explore exactly what prolonged silence does to an avoidant ex, what happens inside their mind, their emotions, and why this quiet distance might just become the loudest message they'll ever hear from you. At the beginning, your silence will feel like a relief to them. Avoidants associate closeness with pressure, with the fear of losing themselves. When you pull back and go quiet, it gives them space. And that space is something they instinctively crave. In fact, they might even feel a sense of victory. To them, your silence means the emotional intensity is gone. No more demands, no more vulnerability, no more need to show up emotionally. For a while, they convince themselves they prefer this. They might say to themselves, "See, I knew I needed distance. This feels right." But here's the irony. That sense of peace is only temporary, because what starts as comfort soon transforms into emptiness. And avoidants, despite how composed they appear, are not immune to loneliness. They just delay it until it becomes unbearable. After a few weeks or months, your absence begins to echo. It's not the same as someone blocking them or yelling at them. That's predictable. But your silence feels different. It's not emotional chaos. It's emotional neutrality. It's calm, controlled. And that's the kind of energy that confuses them most. Avoidants are used to running away from emotional intensity. But when you go silent in peace, there's nothing to run from. And that forces them to face what's really missing. They start to think about you, not because they're ready to reconnect, but because they're trying to understand why your energy feels so irreplaceable. They'll scroll through old messages. Maybe they'll check your profile quietly. And even if they don't reach out, a part of them begins to feel what they worked so hard to avoid: attachment. Avoidants often see relationships as a threat to their independence. So they push people away to maintain control. But silence flips that dynamic entirely. Now you have the control. You're no longer reacting, no longer chasing, no longer emotionally feeding them. Your quiet becomes power. And because avoidants are control-oriented, your distance unnerves them. They start to wonder, did you move on? Did you stop caring? But what really eats at them is this. You're no longer part of their predictable emotional pattern. You're no longer the safe person who always comes back. That realization begins to chip away at their emotional detachment. Slowly, their avoidance turns into curiosity, and curiosity turns into discomfort. At this stage, their coping mechanisms start to surface. Some will try to distract themselves. New hobbies, new people, new adventures. They'll convince themselves they're thriving. But avoidance isn't healing, it's hiding. Every distraction eventually fades, and silence has a way of making the mind circle back to what's unresolved. Late at night or during moments of stillness, they'll start to replay memories. The way you looked at them, the tone of your voice, the moments of warmth they once ignored. They won't show it outwardly, but internally, they begin to miss not just you, but the version of themselves they were when you were around. The one who felt seen, even if they couldn't admit it. Your prolonged silence also challenges their ego. Avoidants thrive on emotional safety through control. They like to believe they can leave and come back whenever they choose. But when your silence extends beyond their expectation, something inside them cracks. It's not just about missing you. It's about realizing they've lost the sense of being desired. Avoidants often equate being wanted with being worthy. When that energy disappears, they start to question themselves. Why didn't you chase? Why didn't you fight harder? Those are the thoughts that slowly break through their emotional armor. It's not punishment, it's reflection. And in that reflection, they start to feel something they've been avoiding their whole life: vulnerability. For some avoidants, This period of silence triggers delayed grief. They never allowed themselves to fully process the relationship when it ended. They detached, rationalized, and moved on. Or so they thought. But true grief doesn't vanish. It waits. When your silence continues and there's no closure, no emotional feeding, that grief begins to surface. They start to feel sadness, regret, and confusion all at once. They might remember moments they dismissed or things they said that pushed you away. They might even wonder what it would feel like to reach out. And yet pride and fear often keep them from doing it. So instead, they sit with it. They think about you more than they admit. They feel your absence more than they show. And that's where real change begins. Not when they talk, but when they feel. Here's what makes prolonged silence so powerful. It gives both of you space to see the truth. For you, it's a period of self-healing. You start realizing that your worth was never tied to their validation. You begin to feel peace where there was once pain. You stop reacting to their avoidance and start observing it for what it is. A defense mechanism, not a rejection of your value. For them, silence becomes a psychological confrontation. It forces them to see the emptiness that avoidance creates. It exposes the loneliness they've been disguising as independence. And while they may not express it directly, the longer the silence continues, the louder that emotional emptiness becomes. At some point, your avoidant ex may try to reappear. Not necessarily with a clear apology. Avoidants rarely return with vulnerability. Instead, they might send a simple "hey" or a random message that feels casual but carries deeper meaning. It's their way of testing the waters, trying to see if your emotional door is still open. This contact isn't always about reconciliation. Sometimes it's just a way to relieve their discomfort, to know you're still there, still emotionally accessible. But here's the turning point. Your response determines whether they repeat their old patterns or finally face their own. If you stay calm, centered, and consistent in your boundaries, they start to realize that their old ways no longer work. That's when real transformation can begin, if they choose to face it. But let's be honest, not all avoidants come back ready to change. Some will notice your silence, feel the discomfort, and still run to someone new to fill the void. But here's the truth. That new connection rarely satisfies them. Why? Because emotional avoidance isn't cured by replacement. It's only masked by it. Eventually, they'll feel the same disconnection with the new person because the problem was never you. It was their inability to connect deeply. And when that realization hits, your silence becomes even more powerful in hindsight. It becomes the quiet lesson they never expected. That love doesn't chase, it holds space, and space reveals truth. So what will your prolonged silence cause? It will create distance, yes, but not the kind that destroys. It's the kind that reveals. It will force your avoidant ex to confront what they've buried beneath control, independence, and emotional armor. It will trigger their reflection, their discomfort, and in some cases, their regret. But most importantly, it will bring you clarity. Because silence isn't a game, it's growth. It's not about punishing them. It's about protecting your peace and letting time do what pressure never could. Show the difference between someone who's ready to grow and someone who's not. So if you're in that silent phase right now, wondering if it even matters, it does. Maybe not in the way you think, but in the way that counts.